Our last choice is by an Australian band, Little River Band, and the song is Lady. It was the second single released off their Sleeper Catcher album in 1978. The first single on that album is another great record called Reminiscing, which might be their crowning achievement, really, as far as creating a great record. Both songs written by Graeham Goble. Little River Band, Australian group, veteran group of musicians. They'd all been in different bands in Australia that had different levels of success, but the core of the group is three singer-songwriters. Goble, a guitarist, Beeb Birtles, not his real name, it's kind of a shortened version of this. He's born in Netherlands, Dutch guy, emigrated to Australia as a child, guitarist, singer, and then the lead vocalist and sometimes keyboards, Glenn Shorrock. So they'd all been in other bands in Australia. They came together and released their first album in 1975. They initially called themselves Mississippi when they were first gigging around. And, you know, like I said, all these guys had some measure of success in Australia. And as we talked about with the Bee Gees, being big in Australia doesn't amount to a whole lot at this period of time. To really make it big in the music business, you got to hit it in the UK or preferably the United States. And once these guys coalesced as a unit, that became their goal, to have hits in America. And they kind of tailored their sound, brilliantly so, I must say, toward American radio. And what really made them work well on American radio was the fact that their sound fit into multiple radio formats. Now, radio is starting to get formatted more tightly as the 70s wear on. So you've got your top 40 stations that are playing the hits. Well, they had top 40 hits, so they were getting plays on those stations. You've got the soft rock format, which we've talked about on several times previous episodes, which is still gaining steam. Their music definitely fit very well in that format. And they could also get played on album-oriented rock radio because these guys had the instrumental chops, and when they wanted to rock out, they could. I think they were looking at bands like the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac. That was kind of their aim, is to get up into that category of group.
Yeah, can hear some similarities there.
Yeah, and they had the goods. They had these three songwriters and singers, and harmony was a very big element of their sound. They had these tight, high harmonies. Again, Beeb Birtles, Graeham Goble, Glenn Shorrock, the three vocalists. Shorrock took the lead on most of their songs, but wasn't the songwriter on all of them. That was shared among different guys. Instrumentally, very good group. These guys, all good players, and the band itself, the personnel, was constantly changing. They're seemingly upgrading all the time as they went along in the 70s, getting better and better players. At this point in time, the lead guitarist is a guy named David Briggs, and then you had George McCardle on bass, Derek Palici on drums. So Reminiscing is a really very much a soft rock song. It's a middle of the road song, really, more than anything else. I mean, that got played certainly. Now, I grew up in a radio family. My dad was a small town radio program director, a duopoly, and AM FM stations. The FM was country. The AM, when I was a kid, was what we call full service AM. So they played music, but they also did news and local sports, and had other shows and stuff. But the music format was middle of the road. So this MOR, it's even softer than soft rock. This is more like classic vocalists of the 50s and 60s, and then the singer-songwriter stuff, and just music that, wouldn't upset your grandparents, basically.
Yeah.
And, some current hits fit in that format. I remember one of the songs that I think both you and I have considered for 78, Walter Egan's Magnet and Steel. I remember hearing that quite a bit on KELA.
Yeah, love that song.
My dad's radio. But Reminiscing fit perfectly into that format. Just a beautifully constructed record. And Graeham Goble, the songwriter, they said they're going for Eagles, Fleetwood Mac level of success, but a couple of the things that he cited as strong influences on their music, the group Bread, which is a band that was critically pretty reviled in the 70s and 80s, but I think retrospectively now, people look back and say, God, these were great records, just beautiful records, incredibly well recorded, beautifully sung, very melodic.
And you get the vocal harmonies for sure.
Oh, yeah, certainly.
On that, yeah.
And then he cited like Tin Pan Alley, like Cole Porter in particular as a songwriter. And this song really has a feel for that. And it's a nostalgic song.
Reminiscing.
Glenn Miller's band is referred in the lyric. And just beautifully sung by Glenn Shorrock. He's an outstanding vocalist.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Lady. Now, I'm going to use this phrase for the first time. Now, our playlist, if you check it out, and we hope you're listening to our playlist, you can find it on Spotify. Sheryl has created it on Spotify. I've also put it on Apple Music. I think it's accessible to the public. If you just search on GenExcellent, Gen Excellent, you'll find it. Our playlist, it's very pop friendly, a lot of AM hits, a lot of stuff that wasn't critically popular at the time. But I've not used this phrase once, I think, in our previous podcast. I'm going to use it now, guilty pleasure, because Lady is not Shakespeare. The lyrics they're silly, they're kind of dumb.
So lady, any song that has lady in it, yes, or in the title especially,
now,
you can pretty
Sheryl,
much just put into the category of guilty pleasure.
You can speak to this because you're a lady. When you hear that, when you hear a guy use that term.
Well, I have to take it in context.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the 70s, so there's also like Kenny Rogers' Lady, I'm your knight in shining armor, and I love you. And then there's like once, twice, three times a lady. Yeah. And then lady. So, I mean, it's all over the place in the 70s. So right. I don't feel like offended by it. But I actually love this song. I love this song. And one of the reasons I love it so much is I love singing it.
Yes.
It is
that's why it's
one
on
of the
here.
Best songs to sing.
Karaoke
we had this
heaven.
Album. Yeah. My mom had the Little River Band's Greatest Hits when I was, growing up. So it was one of, because she had a pretty small record collection. And so that was one of the few records that I listened to a lot. And, I would just belt out those songs, all of them. But this song, yes, is just such a great, fun song to sing.
Yeah.
And I don't really pay attention to the lyrics. I mean, we've already discussed that before, too. So I don't really care what he's saying. I mean, it sounds genuine. It doesn't... you're there on the dance floor, making me want you somehow. It's like
the harmonies. Sure. The harmonies are so great on that line there in particular. The song had been kicking around for a while. Now, it was the second single on Sleeper Catcher. They'd hit it with their third album, Diamantina Cocktail. That's when they started having American radio hits. But they've been touring with some big acts before that. They had toured in the UK and the United States. And we're starting to build a name for themselves, getting a lot of good word of mouth from fellow musicians. People are like, man, these guys, you got to check them out. They're the goods. And they are. I mean, you think a Little River Band is this easy listening soft rock group. These guys are killer musicians. Really great band. And live, they could duplicate those records note for note. And the vocal parts as well.
Yeah, the vocals are really what make this band. I mean, like you said, they are great musicians too, and they're very accomplished. But the vocals are just great. Yeah.
So this Lady comes out really during their peak run of singles, starting with Reminiscing, then Lady, and then you get to the next album with Lonesome Loser in '79 and Cool Change. That's a run of four really good. I
love that song.
Really good singles back to back.
Yeah.
So they're starting
Lonesome Loser, I can kind of hear like the Eagles.
Yes.
And in that for sure. And also the Night Owls has that kind of like that feel to it.
The Night Owls, so now you're getting into the 80s there with that. I actually had that 45. And their sound is starting to change a little bit. So what I was going to say, so Graeham Goble writes both Reminiscing and Lady. So he has the two smash hits on Sleeper Catcher as they're really starting to hit their stride in America. Glenn Shorrock, who's the lead vocalist, hated the song. So apparently Lady had been kicking around for years, and Goble had been offering it to the group on previous albums, and no, get that out of here. We don't. And he finally gets it on in '78 on Sleeper Catcher, and it becomes, I think, I believe it's their best-selling single in the United States now. It's right up there. But Shorrock,
Reminiscing, yeah,
Shorrock hated it. So as you know, they have this run of hits, and they're getting into the '80s. You've got multiple songwriters and vocalists in the group, but Goble he's essentially the leader here. He's the studio perfectionist. He said he has a little bit of performance anxiety. He's more comfortable in the back, so he never steps out front. He's never a lead vocalist on anything, but he sings, a critical part of their harmony. Initially high harmony, and then later on a lower part. But his writing starts to change, and as they get into the 80s, they're starting to head more in an AOR direction, a little heavier, a little more rock, and he's writing songs that he felt didn't really suit Glenn Shorrock's voice as well, and they ended up pushing Glenn out of the band. But it kind of, Lady, I guess, would be the first seeds of discord because he hated the song, and then Goble gets the last laugh when it's a big hit. But the Night Owls, they actually had a new bassist at this point named Wayne Nelson, and he sang lead on that because Goble thought his voice was more suitable in a higher register. And then more of the songs that Goble is writing, he just doesn't feel Glenn is the man for them. And there's some tension between the two that had probably been simmering for a while. And they end up pushing Glenn out of the band. They bring in this guy named John Farnham. Now, most American music fans aren't going to know this name that well because when he was the Little River Band, they weren't having big hits in America. They'd passed their peak by this point. And then he became this massive star in Australia with his solo record, Whispering Jack, which came out in 86. And then he ends up leaving Little River.
Didn't he have a hit with You're the Voice? Is that him?
I think that's on the big hit song on Whispering Jack, which was a massive, massive hit single.
Oh, okay.
Worldwide, just didn't have any impact in the United States at all.
I know that song. Yeah.
Very 80s. Very
totally.
80s song.
Totally. Yeah.
John Farnham he's got these amazing set of pipes, just an incredible voice. But if you watch performance clips when he's in the band, he's very hammy. He's just kind of trods all over the songs with his personality. Undeniably talented vocalist, no question about it. I mean, he could hit the stratosphere with his voice. It's strong,
quite a range.
Strong in the upper registers and a lot of range. But he is just this goofy, hammy guy on stage, and it had always been a group effort before, and I think the other members of the group were just not comfortable with John Farnham and all his theatrics. Whereas Glenn Shorrock, there's a great live video called Live Exposure after their Time Exposure album, a concert recorded at the Summit Arena in Houston that shows how great these guys were live. And they had a brand new lead guitarist by the time they recorded this concert too, who just shreds. His name's Stephen Housden. A hell of a guitarist. But all these guys, they're like studio musicians. They're like Steely frickin' Dan. I mean, they're good and studio singers. But shortly after that, Shorrock's out, Farnham's in. I think he recorded 3 or 4 albums with John Farnham. Don't have the nearly the same level of success that they had before. And eventually Farnham goes massive as a solo act. Still a huge, huge star in Australia. Shorrock ends up back in the band, but their time had come and gone by this point. But Lady endures, and it's just, again, one of those songs that puts a smile on your face. You can't help but sing along to it when it comes on. And those are the kind of fun songs you want in a group atmosphere on your playlist to have everybody having a good time.
Yeah, I think it fits along with YMCA as far as it's like, like you're not going to be like, oh, this song when Lady comes on. And I also think it's one of those songs too that a lot of people don't remember maybe. I mean, they really fell pretty far out of favor, their type of music that they were doing, and not just them specifically. And a lot of people, I think of reminiscing when they think of this band. And that's, it's definitely has like a cheese factor to it but aside from the word lady and the name of the song, I think other than that, it's not dated, like the song itself, I think it's a really good song.
I love you best. You're not like the rest.
You're not like the rest. You're there when I need you. You're there when I need.
And then the second time,
need you.
When he hits that high.
Yes.
So Glenn hated the song, but he did his part on the vocal.
He did a great vocal performance. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So love the song, love singing along to it. And there it is. It's on the playlist. Another pop classic on our Poptastic GenExcellent playlist. We promise there will be more rock.
We keep saying that. I think what happens is we're picking the rock songs for the albums a lot of the time. The rock albums.
Well, here's what's happening.
They're not going on the playlist.
We are giving the edge to the songs that we liked at the time as kids. And as kids, we weren't into heavy rock music at that point. I wasn't, certainly.
No.
In 1978, I didn't even know who Led Zeppelin was in 1978, probably.
No.
You know,
neither did I.
I don't think
but I knew who the Little River Band were.
Yeah, I certainly did know who the Little River Band were. And yes, I have created an alternative playlist on Apple as well called GenRoxalot, GenRoxalot. So you can find the rockier stuff that we like from the same era that we're covering. And basically, I've just picked tracks off our album picks over the years, and then a couple of the songs that we didn't put on 72, 73 because it was only hits at that point, but I've added a couple of those to the GenRoxalot playlist as well. And there will be rock to come, certainly, as we head toward the 1980s. But again, I'm 9 years old in 1978. I'm not listening to hard rock music then. I'm listening to top 40, so that's what I remember.
Yeah, me too.
I certainly remember. I certainly loved Baker Street at the time. I certainly remember hearing "Lady" on the radio at the time and loving that as well.